What's up, everybody? Welcome back. Lindsay, I appreciate you being here. Good morning, good afternoon for you.
Thanks. Nice to have me here.
So this morning we're short EurCad. It's good to finally be in a decent looking trade. I know even for you who had a trade on Monday, it's been a pretty slow week. I didn't take the trade with you on Monday, but I figured we could hop on here, give everybody a little insight onto the trade from Monday, the trade today, and also talk about some of the stuff that we've been seeing come up over and over again. Not as issues, I don't like to use the word issues, but as road bumps for a lot of the guys in the chat. You know what I mean? Like little speed bumps, you know what I mean? One of them I think has been divergence. So when let me share my screen and we can just kind of get into this here as this thing's now pushing for us here. Let me throw us over just on 15-minute chart here. I'll show you guys really quick. My Owanda, I'm up 22, 23 pips. The initial risk here for me, Lindsay, was about 10. How far was your stop?
My stop initially was about 14, and then I actually brought mine down slightly as the trade was developing, just to keep it above the 21. Sorry. Got
it. So where's your entry price? I'm in at 62.
I was in at 57. I was in at 57.
Got it. So like right beneath me, not even very far. So I think start to finish, this is a pretty solid trade. For me, I think what like the nail in the coffin was, and I feel like we can kind of work backward as it's coming down, but really it was the breakout. The TDI was something that you and I both are going to tell everybody that this is something you just want to ride that short bias on and just wait for the best short entry to present. So when it broke for a new low a day, today being Wednesday, it's a new low of week, midweek. That's a pretty strong level for us to look for. It is a new low. Oh no, I'm sorry. It's not a new low of week. Monday.
No, Monday was
So it's just a new low of day.
Yeah.
So that breakout was the initial move. Was that where you took your position?
Yeah, and the 2 candle breakout. Yep.
So what did you like most about this, and what did you feel like might be an issue for it?
I honestly just liked how the EMAs were. I liked perfect liquid 50.
I'll put the pivots on for you too.
I had my pivots and it was below the daily pivot.
Yep.
And when it broke out for a new low of day, it broke below the S1 level. So my next take profit to that, because I did give this a B setup, was the S2 level.
Yep, that's where we're just at right now, just pinned it.
And then I do have a wee support zone just after that where it's just came down and pinned. So that was my only concern, was to get to that zone. But I knew that I had measurable risk reward to that zone. So I was happy to come in on a B setup, and it made total sense to me.
Yeah, same reasoning for me. On the 1 minute, what I did was, because I knew on that 15-minute formation that we would want the next candle to be bearish. We would want to see it extend on the 15 minutes. So what I did was, because to me, I felt this 15-minute formation could be a little bit overextended. I felt like it could be a little bit too big, just because it was the biggest bar of the day and it was a low of day. And sometimes that's where I've seen some trap overextension type moves. So what I decided to do was just wait and see if it would hold the 8. And when the next 15-minute bar only came back halfway and we started to become bearish here off the 8, that's where on the 1 minute, to me, the risk reward made a little bit more sense, because I knew it could hold that 50 here on the 1 minute and come lower, and hold the 50 and come down. So now at this point, the risk reward is tight. It's a no-brainer to take that trade and follow you guys.
Yeah, that was a good entry. That was really a good entry for when you're seeing that momentum move.
But it's also like, it's cool because I think it'll drive home for hopefully everybody watching. You want these entries. Like, we're waiting all morning. We were watching this as a D1 up here. Like, there was money in it earlier this morning. So there's been a lot of patience involved in this idea. But even there, when the formation finally comes, I'm still sitting on my hands a little bit longer to just say, like, let me see if I can get a little bit better risk reward here. You know what I mean? That was my thought.
And I think with Euro pairs being slightly choppier this morning, I think that's where the patience really did have to come in. For us pulling the trigger, because as we know, it was choppy. It came down earlier to test that S1 pivot, and I had one of the guys say to me, Lindsay, if this presents an A1, will you pull the trigger on it? I says, as long as I get a nice close and it breaks the pivot and it breaks for a new low day, I'll pull the trigger.
And it did. It's exactly what it did. EU this morning was something that we were looking at to see if it was going to come lower. And like you said, very choppy. I was trying to figure out why they were so choppy this morning, but it seems like it was just trying to shake itself lower. Like,
I think it was just trying to shake. You know what I mean? Yeah, I was the same, because I was watching that and I was watching the DEXA index, and it was very much the same. It was choppy. So they were both just doing the same thing, and we just had to give it patience for it to drop, and then eventually obviously it broke out.
You know, it's interesting. This week has been, I think, at least for me, more focused on Euro pairs, where I thought I was going to make some money, where I feel like a couple of weeks ago, it's been more GBP pairs. So it's interesting to yeah, it fluctuates. You know what I mean? You just have to stay open-minded to it. I also noticed, check this out. If we throw the volume on there, I know that's not something that we typically use.
I actually quite like this because I've seen you do this before, but I haven't used it. Where do you add the volume? So how do you add that on?
So in indicators, I just searched volume and it's just right here. Now it's saved in my favorites. So what I do is I can just put it right here and then use the little eye and then it makes it visible or not. And like just something that I noticed was you had a lot of selling come in here. Then even after that, when there was a little bit, it looks like you would call it buying. The selling overpowered 3-1 over the last 4 bars as this formation pulled in. And that's a pretty good sign, you know what I mean? And then you can see big red bars kind of driving even more. So, and not to say that I don't think you could ever trade on volume alone, but I think that helps, you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
But let's take a look too at the higher time frames, because I feel like that also should play into how we manage the rest of this trade. Because to me, I'm looking to see if this thing is going to come down towards ADR 155 flat is the next.
Yeah, I just solid have that number. Support. Yeah, where did you say there? 55 flat.
1.550. Yeah, that's what I'm looking at. You're looking at the low of day on Monday.
I'm looking at the low of day of Monday. Yeah.
And you're looking at this as support.
Push. That was where I can measure. That's what I used to measure my risk reward. And I knew it was just at the pivot as well. So that was kind of my first target. And then I thought if it breaks that, then obviously it can go flat or ADR level.
Typically in formations like this, like these 2 candles off the 8 EMA, I know they're not off the 21 and I know that TDI isn't great, but we'd like to see this bar stay bearish. So for the next 20 minutes at least, you'd like to stay in this trade and see where this finishes. Because if this stays bearish, who's to say that the next candle can't come and test that zone? You know what I mean? Hour by hour. Do you then, I guess, go to the 4-hour and start looking there? Because to me, this was very short biased. It was outside the 8 EMA. TDI was in the sell zone. So I felt this was short bias there pretty well. And let's take a look here on the daily. Get rid of this. Yeah, so we recently broke through the 21. L50 is not too short bias, but recently broke the 21. So kind of split there, you know?
Yeah, and obviously you've got that 50 in the way as well.
Right.
That was the only other thing I had on my notes.
Now this is where I feel like, good, sorry.
No, you're good. No, I was just saying that was all I had on my notes. So it all kind of ties into that, to that zone that we're watching just now to see if it's going to break it.
Right.
Monday's
so
low.
In a situation like this where you're off the 8 EMA, you're showing some pins now. This is where I don't like the pivots because the pivots are telling you, oh, it pinned the pivot, it's going to come up, it's going to reverse. Well, that's not necessarily what it's going to do. No. It might pin the pivot and then break the pivot with the next big bar. You know what I'm saying? You can't. So how do you read this? Do you just take profit each?
It's just still just read it the same way as we do, using your stop loss to the R multiples and taking your partial profits.
Yep. I
don't just say, oh, it's because it's came down here with this S2 pivot, I'm going to close the trade.
Right, because it could blast through that pivot.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, especially when you have space on ADR. Like this has a decent ADR left in it of it's 90 on ADR, so that'll still give you a nice push down almost to the S3 pivot if it wants to. But like you said, it's got the lower weak support and that pivot. So we'll see how that goes. Let's talk about the trade on Monday.
Yep, British pound CHF.
Tell me about this, because for me, I just didn't love the CHF idea with the fact that it was oversold and that the EMAs could have been better. So I didn't like all of that together, but you still felt the risk reward was worth it? I
still thought the risk reward was worth it, as I liked the D1 coming off the 50, although it was very choppy. So I didn't want to pull the trigger on the D1 because I didn't like the structure on the 1 minute.
Makes sense.
So I held off to see if it would give me the A1 formation, which it did, the 2 candle off the 21. And it was the same kind of thing. It broke the zone that it was trying to, so it was the Asia low, and it broke back through that and closed. And I liked the perfect liquid 50.
It makes sense.
Being below the daily pivot, I traded that down to the S1 pivot.
That's what I was just going to say. It kind of looks like the trade from today. If you look at it, it's a 3 candle formation. It takes a while to get to the 8. It took you, about an hour and a half or so?
Yeah.
About an hour? Yeah, an hour and a half. So it takes some time to make it to that pivot, but look, 2 pins to the pivot and then it moves off. Now, if you go back to EurCad today, we'll see what it does between these pivots now. It is interesting to see how well it can respect them as levels. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's tough because how do you know? Is it going to stop at S2 today, or is it going to go to, you know what I mean, and hold that 8 EMA?
Yeah.
So it's like a weird combination of using both.
I think it's just that we just have to, because you never had them built into the ASFX system, I just use them as note to myself that they're there, and, you know, use them as a kind of guide that it could come to this S1 pivot and give a bit of fight before pushing through it. So I still always use my exit rules that is built in for taking your partial profits and using your R multiple for your stop loss.
Do you ever go to the higher time frame and use the, like, because I know there's different pivots on different time frames, right? Like there's a weekly pivot.
I just use I just use these ones, on the 15th.
Interesting. So GBP CHF was the Monday idea. Did you have anything else today or yesterday that you were like really close to trading? For me, it was Euro USD today. I really was trying to find an entry on that.
I liked Euro USD, and I was watching British Pound USD earlier today, because obviously the EMAs and that's very bullish. But the same thing, I had the 4-hour resistance noted. Then obviously, although the divergence wasn't significant, it hadn't been overbought, but it was there.
Yeah.
So that was the reason why I thought in the 4-hour resistance and divergence at the same time. And I actually did go to the weekly, and the weekly is right at the 200 EMA.
So it's right at that significant level.
It's right at significant levels, and that's why I didn't pull the trigger on that one. And obviously the liquid 50 being reset like that.
That's what I was going to say. Could it be a combo of divergence on top? Well, yeah, it's not overbought, but it is divergent still, right? Yeah, and the L50 says reset. So this is choppy. That's choppy. 2 things telling you something's going to chop, right? Right. Yeah. I don't love these type of formations either. These 3 candle formations, just because they don't, they don't show as much strength to me.
No. And do you, when you tested the 3 candle formations, I know it's the 21 we used for the 2 candle, but see for 3 candles coming off the 50 like that, would you say you've got to have your stop loss below the formation?
Yeah, it has to. If you're taking something like this stop is very, very tight. You know what I mean? It's very risky. So, but to answer about the testing, I'm not sure. Honestly, I don't know. We'd have to go back and test hundreds of these formations. And say, okay, it's better to keep the stop here or at the bottom. You know what I mean? Does that, and that alters the risk reward. That alters a lot, you know?
Yeah, that's why I don't really like these 3 candle formations.
Look at this, U.S. durable goods news, way better than forecast. It's pushing GBP USD down. So dollar index is up, Euro USD is probably getting pushed way down. Yeah, it is. It looks like it's kind of keeping our trade down a little bit too, pushing the other Euro pairs down. But when you look, the other thing that I like to do with these types of breakouts is when I see this A1 entry present, I like to ask myself, okay, bro, if you come back to this in 3 hours, in hindsight, and this is just holding the 8 EMA all the way down, aren't you going to look at that as your entry and that's where you should have been in? And then when I say yes, that's where I know I got to put something on the trade. Even if I'm feeling a little hesitant, you know what I mean? From maybe, at least for me, if I don't trade for a couple of days, like I was joking in the chat, I'm like, oh, I forget how to trade. But it's half true, you know what I mean? Because you get a little hesitant, I think, to pull the trigger after you don't pull the trigger for a couple of days. So it takes a lot of discipline to stay focused and say, no, I'm still going to take this trade, still going to follow the rules, and still going to manage it as if it was the day after I took the last winning trade or the day after I took, you know what I mean?
And I think with the EMAs, the way they were, and that perfect liquid 50, and there was probabilities coming into our favour with EurCad, so that was definitely one we had to pull the trigger on. Definitely.
Let's take a look and see. Yeah, look at the dollar index now, pushing pretty well. 93.35. Nice.
Yeah.
Interesting. So that's behind these durable goods news here.
That was at 1:30, was it? Well, 1:30 my time that news came out, wasn't it?
Yeah. Wow, that's a really, really big beat. Interesting.
Yeah.
So now we can wrap up today's video just by giving everybody some more insight. So now going into managing the rest of this trade, I assume you grabbed a little profit as it pinned your pivot point. Did you take a little bit off there?
I took a bit off there. Yep.
Nice. So now are you going to just look to see, okay, let's see if we break the 8 EMA, we break the 8, you take a little bit more off, but if you hold the 8, you just kind of manage it candle by candle.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. It is. That's the thing that I like about our systems, because we have precise rules. There's no guessing here. We are just following. I pretty much trade the same exit rules on every trade. So I just follow the rules and do what I need to do.
It's interesting because I feel like a lot of the guys overlook, or maybe it's not even that they overlook, it's just that they skim over the systems as a whole when they first come in, and then they overlook a couple little details that really can make or break the way that you end up using the system. You know what I mean? And the way, especially the way you end up managing your trades. It really does come down to like the small little details. So I feel like a lot of the questions, at least that I've been answering recently, come back to just, I think, people rushing through the content, rushing through trying to make money as quick as they can, rather than kind of settling in and focusing on like the guys who we've worked with in the boot camps and stuff like that are very meticulous, like very detailed, that journal everything, that book a bunch of calls with us. Those guys, they kill it. But they're also the guys that trade so much less than everyone else thinks. Everyone else looks up at those guys, the guys with the 6-figure accounts and the guys that have been doing well for a long time. And they're like, they must trade so much. They must do so much. In reality, I can promise you that's the opposite. You know, they really, they live by the do less, do it better, do it bigger.
Yep, and I think that's just down to having, you know, it is so detailed a plan and so precise rules that, and you know the patterns, the repeatable patterns that you're looking for every day in the market. And if they don't come clean to you, then you're not going to pull the trigger on them.
So going into the rest of the week, what's the focus for you?
Focus for me is just to stay disciplined, and I feel the markets have been pretty choppy, so I must stay tight on my gradings. And I've only got tomorrow to go. So for me, tomorrow is like my Friday. So I really need to come in and, you know, it has to be a real clean setup for me to take it after having 2 winning trades this week.
Makes sense, 100%. Has there been anything from the winners this week that stuck out to you as something that's like a reinforcer that you're doing well?
I think it is just still about being picky and keeping the probabilities into your favour. And when you see it present to you, everyone reads the market so differently. So like me trading British Pound CHF, you didn't pull the trigger on it. So I think you have to, when people are, you know, kind of questioning you about your trades or whatever, everybody reads it different. But at the same time, with our systems, I seen it as a risk appetite for me to pull the trigger on it, but for you who's trading a bigger account than me, you're going to be even more selective. So it all depends on your whole scenario of how you are seeing the market overall.
Where I think a lot of people get to that point, not a lot, but I should say some people get to that point, but then there's one more step, which is like, then you need to be okay with you taking the trade and me not taking the trade and me not coming to the chart later saying, oh, Lindsay made money today, I need to now take a trade today. Like that's not the approach to it. Everyone can use the system. It's like a level of education to then apply it in their own way. You know what I mean? There's still that piece of edge that everybody does develop. Like some of the trades you take off the 200 EMA, they're trades that I would never look at. You know what I mean? But like today's entry, I had a better idea on that pullback separate from you. So everybody's still reading the same idea, same bias, same direction, but using the edge a little bit different. It's pretty cool to see. But I think for a lot of guys, especially the newer guys that are listening and watching us and trying to emulate what's working, the details. So if you're listening and you're not feeling, I had a couple of guys message me like, they're like, I'm just not feeling in the flow of the market. Like Lindsay said, it's definitely been choppy, and that could be why you haven't found clean trades. This is just my second trade since last Monday, and today is Wednesday of the following week. So that could definitely be, but also at the same time, I think a lot of people throw themselves out of the flow of the market because they're looking at what other people are saying that they're doing.
Yeah, me too.
You don't even know. You know what I'm saying?
And I also think they put a lot of spokes in the way that they don't need to put in the way. And I think when you start putting like small things, like it's just say the divergence. So yes, we can note that divergence is there, right? And it's present, but it's this, with overbought and oversold divergence, I feel that's more significant. So don't put the spoke in the way of just having a small bit of divergence, because we saw the next candle can come down and just break through that, and it's only been diverging for one candle. Right. You know, so it's wee small things. I think if you're going to put all these spokes in the works, you're never going to pull the trigger on any trade.
It's like paralysis by analysis. So, you get stuck because you do too much analyzing. Yeah. Yes, that's what I feel. And on top of it, like a lot of guys say things that might be rules, but they aren't valuing them correctly. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
they're weighing the
exactly
divergence
yes.
too heavily. And it's like that's
yes.
there. I see that, but you're going to see it blow through this if the trend is really strong and you need. So I think it's going back to the details, which is all in the courses. That's why in the chat this morning, I said to the guy, I was like, listen, man, I didn't even have to give you my time. Right. So why don't you give yourself the time and go back and watch the courses? Just give yourself that refresher. People are so stubborn. It blows my fucking mind. How many people will not go back and watch the videos? They think that them doing, he said that because he's doing journaling every day, that's enough. I'm like, no, it's not. Your journaling could be wrong.
When I came to ASFX and any losses that I took, I obviously reviewed them, journaled them, I did everything. They were my biggest lessons. But at that same time, I always went back and rewatched the course. Yeah, and every time I watched it,
you see something new.
And I've seen something new.
Yeah, it's great. I still rewatch it. And if you don't get
that, I don't understand why they just don't go back and rewatch the content that's going to be able to push them forward.
Right. I think a lot of people don't value the research that went into that. Definitely. That's why I still rewatch it. You know what I mean? Because it was research. Like it was months and months of study that was built to prove the systems. So it's like, it's always a good refresher. But anyway, I think that hopefully the guys swallow some of the ego. Everybody on our team, if you're going to be around and you're going to last in this business, you got to swallow your ego and say, hey, maybe I need to go back and review some beginner stuff if I'm not feeling the flow. Maybe I do need to actually pay attention to Austin and Lindsay's YouTube videos and subscribe and make sure I'm watching all those videos. You know what I mean? Those are the things you got to be willing to ask yourself, swallow the pride, get it out of the way. You're keeping yourself from making money. You're preventing yourself from making money because you want to be right. That's what everybody really, it comes down to. People want to be right more than they want to make money. And at this desk, you can't worry about that stuff. You know?
No, absolutely.
That's why you've done so well lately. It's been how many weeks since you've taken a loss? You know, because you're very
a small loss. I'm just trying to remember now. Boot camp.
Boot camp. My bad. One. That's all my bad though. I take the blame for that one.
No, don't be silly. Don't be silly. I pulled the trigger.
That's good. I know.
But that's the only one.
Good. So it's amazing.
You know, and at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how good your strategy is or whatever. You're going to take losses regardless.
Of course.
And you have to be prepared for that.
Yep. Always. And I think if you take them well, take them fast, like I had on my Instagram post yesterday, then you're able to bounce back, forget about them, and keep it moving forward. Yeah. And that's what we've done well. So that's hopefully what everybody will take from these videos. So with the rest of this trade, today is Wednesday, August 26th. We're still up in EurCad. You have 6.5 minutes left on this candle. It's still outside the 8 EMA.
Yep.
If you guys want to see how this trade plays out, hit the link in the description. I'm going to put in Lindsay's Instagram down below and my Instagram down below. And we'll post about how the trade plays out so you guys can check that out. Lindsay, I appreciate you always. Always. And I appreciate everybody listening. If you want to connect with us, links are going to be down in the description. And we'll see you guys in the next video.
Yep. Thank you.